how like, probably we'll never cover James Bond because it's just sort of, or like Madden football, just because there's it just sort of is just outside of kind of what like this show kind of usually is about, but I think with the Gladiator it slips through because we've got that sequel coming out. There's all that storied stuff around that. Also, it's Ridley Scott, and it's there's a lot of interesting like effects stuff going on, and it is that classic. To me, it's the same as Shawshank Redemption in the sense of like, it's always on in your hotel. Whatever they do with the hotel TVs, Gladiator is always on one of the channels. It's always there, and it is become this like absolute story classic. I remember I rented it. I remember watching it at home. I didn't see it in the theater. I remember enjoying it, like, for sure. I wasn't like, oh my god, this is the greatest. But yeah, you're right. It is such a dad movie. Like, I remember like my buddy's dad loved it, so much, and he liked man movies for men,
I mean, it's a very dad fantasy that, like, listen, I may be the coolest soldier guy in the history of the coolest army that's ever lived, protecting the light of civilization against the barbarian hordes.
Right.
But deep down, all I want is to work the earth on my cool farm where I, like, grow wine grapes and chill out with my smoke show wife and very respectful son.
Completely, and it's totally...
But then they got murdered, and oh no, guess I'm going to have to kick every ass.
Yeah, but that's John Wick my way through the Roman Empire.
The effeminate, spoiled rich kid. I'm on a one-man mission to personally kick the shit out of some namby-pamby little boy man.
I forgot about the whole obsession with the Roman Empire dumb thing that's like kind of a go.
What? I think about it at least once every 15 minutes.
Of course, I forgot you're one of those. So it's I think a good one to cover, and was definitely very interesting, and there's plenty of stories, but man, I think they were just drunk. I think they were just treating it like, the farmers in the field, how they would like drink like whiskey to hydrate. You hear those stories from back in the day? The old-timey farmers, Jake, in the field.
You mean like Switchel, or like, when it's...
No, like just old-timey days, back when they just were it was a different kind of human, And they would like, and like they couldn't drink the water because it was like contaminated, but whiskey kills all that off, so that's what you drink to hydrate.
Yeah, no, people healthier than like either of us could ever be, even with like personal assistance, and they just eat nothing but like lard, biscuits, and whiskey.
Yeah, they're human M&Ms. They have like a thick shell around them that is impenetrable, and it's like probably dirt or something, but it just is there, and it's just, their whole body's callous. There's not a part of them that's not calloused except for like their eyeballs.
It's such the thing where Maximus throughout the movie, his like signature move is like bending over to just pick up some dirt and like just touch it and rub it around a little.
Oh yeah.
Because he's just that fucking real, man.
He's just that of the earth. Yeah. So funny.
But it's competently made. It's beautiful. The score by Zimmer is just like, is magical. Like, every performance works. The action sequences are thrilling. Like, despite the fact that maybe if you really want to like put pins and strings on a corkboard, this gave way to 300, which gave way to the world's shittiest bumper stickers and like entire like ideas of the greatness of Rome in comparison to our decadent modern ways.
Sure, it created the modern toxic male, but I mean, besides that, it really is...
I'm not going that far. It's a very loose association. But there is like, another thing that this movie did was it updated the sword and sandal kind of epic and kind of drew lines between the gladiatorial arena and, Sunday Night Football. Like, it really kind of put you in a place where the gladiator is this, like, superstar kind of guy. And I feel like people really responded to that. And definitely, I think, is part of the reason why this movie stands out, because despite the kind of antiquity trappings, it is very much like just delivering the hits and the action and the bravado for a modern era.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into it. Gladiator, a film directed by Ridley Scott, starring Russell Crowe and Joaquin Phoenix. It centers around a Roman general who, at the hands of Commodus, ends up with his family slaughtered and is reduced to slavery. He becomes a gladiator to fight his way in the Colosseum up through the ranks in order to avenge the murders of his family and the slain emperor who was Commodus, his father. Yeah, baby. What? Why are you making a weird face at me tonight?
I'm remembering the whole chunk where all of the was it like 2 or 3 of the quote unquote historical consultants took their names off the movie because the timeline of events, even though it's based on real figures, is just completely fucked.
It's so fucked. We'll talk about the historical inaccuracies. By the way, I have a list of just some of them. It's very inaccurate, this movie. But let's get into the script because it started way back in the 70s. A man named David Franzoni, who started writing this after he was inspired by his surroundings as he was traveling across Eastern Europe and the Middle East by motorcycle. Again, no, you're like, all right, well, already we get it now. We got some fucking... The badass you were describing, this is the 70s version of that badass. He's literally riding around on a motorcycle through Europe and the Middle East and getting inspired by the land. He was definitely rubbing some dirt. You know what I mean?
There's behind the scenes featurettes from this movie. Obviously, it was during the peak of the reign of the DVD, and Franzoni is such a guy's guy. He is a very he was doing his interview in a leather jacket. And I find this so weird because his resume is insane. His first produced film was Jumpin' Jack Flash.
Yes.
With Whoopi Goldberg, directed by Penny Marshall. Then his next thing is Amistad.
Yes.
With Steven Spielberg.
And that connects him with Spielberg and DreamWorks Pictures, and that's it's because of that he ends up with a 3-picture deal as a writer and co-producer.
That's crazy. How good are you in how fucking easily swayed by a leather jacket is Steven Spielberg?
He's the real deal. And he said, so going back to the 70s, he said, everywhere I went in Europe, there were arenas. Even as I went east, going through Turkey, I began to think to myself, this must have been a hell of a franchise. And when he, after getting this 3-picture deal, he pitches the idea that he had back in the 70s about this Gladiator movie to Spielberg, who tells him to write the script. In order to do so, he ends up reading Historia Augusta, a collection of 30 biographies that breaks down the lives of all the different emperors in the Roman Empire. And from that, he decides to center the story on Commodus. Let's talk about Commodus.
Did you mention Those About to Die?
No. Oh, is that the painting?
No, that's the book.
Oh, yes. Talk about it. Tell me about it.
So, Franzoni, while he was doing all this, also read a novel called Those About to Die, which was a historical kind of fiction about the reign of Commodus and the... what's the name of the actual wrestler / gladiatorial guy that actually killed him?
It's a great name. It was Narcissus.
Narcissus. So the story of an emperor who was killed by this famous gladiator, and the book very explicitly draws parallels between the gladiator arena and modern sports entertainment and sports as a spectacle in our modern era. Not to be confused, of course, with For Those About to Rock, We Salute You, one of the bangingest AC/DC songs ever made.
Yeah, and one thing I didn't realize about gladiator fights is I didn't realize that pro wrestling existed back then, that a lot of these fights were fully staged and not actual, for the most part, it was either fake or starting to break kayfabe to all my ancient Romans, by the way, or just against animals, you know. And you'd start with squirrels, and you'd work your way up. You'd kill a bunch of squirrels.
It's like Pokemon.
Then you do badgers. Then you would move on to a fox and a raccoon. You know what I mean? And eventually, then they just keep throwing more in. They're like, all right, fine. How do you do against 2 tigers and a sloth? What does that look like? And then you use the sloth to slingshot against the tigers. So you can use the sloth like a whip, essentially, to take him out. Yeah, so it was really interesting stuff. They're like, all right, what about a seagull and a fucking bag of weed and, a shark? You know what I mean? They are actually going to do the naval battle simulation stuff in the sequel, by the way, which should be pretty interesting, where they flood the arena with water. I feel like I've stunned Jake into silence.
Something around bag of weed, I really had to just escape to my happy place. I'm not going to lie, hold it. Yeah, no, it was, I mean, the movie gets into it a little, that like they're thrown into these like quote unquote historic battles from Rome's glorious past.
Yes,
but
yes.
The catch is they win, and they were supposed to just get slaughtered.
Right.
And that's like the idea that the Roman audience was like actually jazzed to see the script flipped, even if it meant they lost, is very much about.
Right, it was something unexpected, right? So it got everybody on the side.
The rebel upstart.
So yeah, Commodus, I can't remember where we're at, so I'll just say it does appear in the history. One of the biggest historical inaccuracies, he did not murder his father. The important bit is that he became emperor at the age of 18, and it was imperator under his father a couple years before that, and his reign was at a time of peace for the empire. Therefore, there was a focus on gladiatorial games, which created a cult-like status for himself as he took part in them. And Narcissus, who we mentioned, was employed as a wrestling partner and personal trainer to Commodus for the gladiator battles, and they of course were obviously always set in Commodus's favor when he was in them. And in the history, it stated that he was hired by several senators, Narcissus was, to assassinate the emperor after several failed attempts by them. And initially, Commodus was poisoned by his concubine with wine. This failed, though, so Narcissus ends up entering his bedchamber and strangling the drunken Commodus. Now, this is debated, that we don't know for a fact, but that is maybe the funnest version of what apparently truly happened in the history. It feels very like Game of Thrones.
In every conflict, there's at least one bitch. A huge bitch, a silly bitch,
a little baby bitch, a raggedy bitch. But sometimes it's unclear who the bitch is.
I'm Kara Klenk.
And I'm Jackie Zabrowski.
And on our new Call and Advice podcast, we're going to help you figure out who's the bitch.
We want to hear your problems, dilemmas, and quandaries.
No topic is off limits.
Does your coworker flirt with the boss to get ahead?
Is your bestie having her destination wedding on a holiday weekend?
Is your therapist being clingy?
Does your friend keep bringing her toddler to adult parties?
Come on, there's definitely a bitch in your life, and we want to hear about it.
You can email us, DM us, leave us a voicemail, and even call in live to talk to us in person about the alleged bitch in your life.
Just go to who'sthebitch.com for all the ways you can contact us.
New episodes drop every Wednesday starting in October on the Last Podcast Network, so subscribe now on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen.
And tune in to our live stream kickoff on September 30th on the Last Podcast Network Twitch channel, where we'll be taking your calls live on air.
Help us help you figure out who's the bitch!
When you choose to earn your degree online from Southern New Hampshire University, you're saying yes to new opportunities and to new adventures. You're saying yes to something big, something you've always wanted to do. If earning your degree is one of your goals this new year, SNHU can help you get there. With low online tuition, no set class times, and multiple term starts per year, you can set the pace that works for you and save money along the way. Visit snhu.edu today to get started.
With the $5 meal deal at McDonald's, you pick a McDouble or a McChicken, then get a small fry, a small drink, and a 4-piece McNuggets. That's a lot of McDonald's for not a lot of money.
Price and participation may vary for a limited time only.
A lot of these ancient historical texts are kind of, this is before proper history, and back then history was like some guy made a cool story. And sometimes it was kind of true, and sometimes it wasn't.
Yeah.
You mentioned the painting Pollice Verso, which was an 1872 painting by Jean-Léon Gérôme. You're probably familiar with it. It basically looks like a screenshot from the movie Gladiator, with a helmeted warrior standing triumphant over a fallen foe as the crowd offers the ceremonial thumbs down to kill them.
Yes.
Or whatever the... Okay, I'm sorry. Pollice Verso actually means with a turned thumb, which is the official name for the thumb signal that crowds would use in ancient Rome. Although, even though the movie follows the Siskel and Ebert rule of thumbs up, thumbs down, In reality, thumbs up meant you should kill the gladiator, whereas to signal that you should spare them, you wrapped your hand around the thumb, meaning like hold thy sword, hold thy like anger. This is a point that Roger Ebert personally took umbrage with in his review on At the Movies, which
That's
I watched
funny.
for this episode. He hated this movie, by the way.
Oh, really?
Thought that like the cinematography was too dark. Thought it was too like anti-historical. Thought it like spat on the legacy of his favorite sword and sandals epics from years gone by. And it was I'm so sorry. I forgot the name of the guest critic that was there with him, but she was like, "Are you nuts? This movie fucking slaps, you old weirdo." I'm paraphrasing, but she was like, "You kidding me? This is going to win an Oscar. This is absolutely a thrilling and beautiful movie that people are going to love."
Yeah, for sure. Bad news for him. Like, so many movies are going to copy all the techniques done in this particular film for like the modern like dude bro action movie until Fast and the Furious kind of came along. But anyways, producers at DreamWorks. Yeah, you mentioned the painting. That's actually what it took to convince Ridley Scott to direct this project. All they had to do, it was producers at DreamWorks, Walter F. Parks and Douglas Wick. They took that painting and showed it to Ridley Scott. He said, "I'm a very visually driven director." This is Ridley Scott talking. Parks opened a picture of a painting by a fellow called Jean-Léon Jerome. It shows the armored man with the tuna fork that would kill you standing over a netted victim. He's looking up at a black marble wall at his purple-faced Nero, out of his mind on wine or water. He's got a thumbs down, and I stared at it for a moment, and it was like a flash. When you're experienced like me, you can do a little knee-jerk flash decision, and normally it's accurate. So I said, "I'll do it." Parks said, "Hang on, you don't know what the story's about." I said, "I don't care. I'll do it." And that was it. So he just sounds like a maniac, Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott, born into a British military family just 2 years before the Second World War. His dad, therefore, wasn't around a lot in his early childhood, and they traveled around quite a lot to be near him. So definitely understood like kind of that military life going into making this film. And growing up, he loved science fiction movies and novels, but it was Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey that cemented in his mind that he'd be a filmmaker. So he goes to the Royal College of Art in London, attributes what he learned there to the fantastic visuals in his films, and is extremely visual. Makes a lot of sense talking about the painting and everything. Like, while there too, he also helped establish the college film department, and he got his start at the BBC as a set designer and then director of episodes of TV series there. With his brother Tony Scott, he founds a film and commercial production company, and with that he helped revitalize the Chanel No. 5 brand by putting out commercials that felt like next level short films. His debut feature film was The Duelists, which made a big splash at Cannes Film Festival and kind of more like Gladiator than the films he would most become known for after this. It was actually a historical drama set in France during the Napoleonic Wars, which focuses on a series of duels between two rival officers spanning 2 decades. I never saw The Duelists. I need to go back and watch that. And then he was inspired by the success of Star Wars to make his next film, Alien, which, and essentially the rest is history. He follows that up with Blade Runner, and from there he's able to just have this like amazing steady career, but mostly remember him not for The Duelists. Remember him for his sci-fi over the tops, kind of future city kind of shit, or obviously Aliens, to like a horror movie set in a spaceship. So yeah, it's kind of like it's still his realm, though. I didn't realize, with the military background, the doing the Duelist stuff like that. But Ebert was right. Ebert was completely dead. He was dead ass when he stated that it kind of spit in the face of the sword and sandal movies he loved. That makes sense that he would dislike it if he loves sword and sandal movies, because when Franzoni and Scott first start talking about Gladiator, they agreed they didn't want to make the typical sword and sandal film. Now, we kind of forget about that. Was like, again, I mentioned Fast and the Furious or whatever. I kind of feel like sword and sandal was that for the older generation, right? And like Westerns were like, that was the superhero movie of the day, the big spectacle movie. And it's actually referring to a slew of Italian-made historical, mythological, and biblical epics, generally set in Greco-Roman antiquity and in the Middle Ages. They are also referred to as peplum films, and these were generally put out between the years of 1958 to 1965.
Peplum is a type of toga that is famously depicted
In these movies, right? Yeah. It was marked by the success of Hercules, starring American bodybuilder Steve Reeves in 1959, which was a huge success and also set a precedent for bodybuilders starring in these types of films. And they really are just, they're bodybuilder, they're dudes, ripped bros, slaying monsters, saving scantily clad ladies, very formulaic, very spectacle-based, and really just more about, like, how much violence and, over-the-top stuff can we, monsters and stuff can we get on the screen.
I mean, the classic joke, if you remember Airplane, or I think was it in Clueless, too? The idea that, like, closeted gay men were obsessed with gladiator movies because it was just all these, like, oiled up, barely clothed men just, like, grunting at each other for a while.
Right, totally. And the genre does burn out by the mid-'60s. The spaghetti western and Euro spy genres take over after that. However, there is a second wave of sword and sandal films marked by Arnold Schwarzenegger in the 80s with Conan the Barbarian and Clash of the Titans. And they were quite a bit gorier at this time around in order to make up for the small budgets, and tended to be directed by horror directors of the time, which makes a lot of sense because they're kind of going for that. They're almost exploitation-y type deals, right? Where they're just trying to get that stuff up on the screen so that we can, just enjoy like a good, slaughtering of sorts of men and monsters alike. And, sometimes it'd be like a honey badger and like a giraffe, and some cocaine, like, because they like to throw a drug in just to see what would happen. They give the drug to the animal, they give the drug to the gladiator, and you never know, and it's just it's almost like a science experiment. They're just trying different, combinations of drugs and animals.
Listen, they were drinking out of lead vessels, out of lead-lined aquifers. There was a lot of lead in the blood. It's just, shit was going to get weird.
There's just all sorts of weird stuff. They dress like put a bunch of hay in the shape of a woman and like ogle it, just for pleasures on the side. It was that kind of a time, in ancient Rome. So instead of watching sword and sandal movies, they watched films like All Quiet on the Western Front for its depiction of the trauma caused by wartime and the experience of bringing that home and returning to civilian life. They watched La Dolce Vita, which, according to Franzoni, quote, because of the corrupt Roman bourgeoisie, it depicts fancy Roman society in the late 50s, directed by Fellini, the great Fellini. And, it sort of gave a vibe of that, like kind of fancy antiquity, albeit in a different time period. And for the hero's bad end, due to an institution that at the end of the day must always win out, they studied One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which makes a lot of sense because that is the same kind of deal with Jack Nicholson's character going up against Nurse Ratched. It feels very similar, actually, to the Commodus Maximus kind of rivalry,
So, wait, hold on. You're talking about all the stuff they did to prepare this script and all the ideas they were having and all the influences they were having. So how the fuck did this massive bajillion-dollar epic start filming with like maybe 20 pages down?
Yeah, it's really bizarre. I don't even understand how movies get made like this. It always baffles me when we encounter a movie like this. The script went through major rewrites during that time with Ridley Scott and even other cast members' involvement. To punch up the dialogue, they hired John Logan to work on the script, and it's he who changed it so Maximus's family is killed off to up the need for vengeance. But still, by the time they get to filming, there is barely a script by all accounts. It was never really finished. It continued to change daily during filming. Ridley Scott said, in the first act, the Battle of Germania, Russell's saying, what the bloody hell am I going to say? And I said, well, there's going to be a bird on a twig, and you're going to look at this robin and how ironic this robin is in the field of battle where we're going to see a bloodbath. So he went, okay, and he looks at this twig and imagines a robin, and then he said, well, what the fuck am I going to say? I said, I don't know. Why don't you just say, morning. It looks like snow. And that's apparently how the process went. Franzoni describes the rewrite process during shooting as follows. We'd all drink whiskey and smoke cigars. We'd exchange notes and ideas. Then I'd go back and write at 3 or 4 in the morning, and I'd hand the pages to Ridley. During the shoot, I went off and met with Russell. We would meet almost daily before he would go shoot and talk about the scenes. I remember once we were sitting on the ground drawing things in the sand. It was a very 60s way to make a film. And the cast was encouraged to throw in ideas into the pot, and as they went, with suggestions getting used left and right. And we need to talk about this cast a little bit. But yeah, it was, I don't even get that. Like, I don't even understand. The whole thing with making a movie is you like have a script. It's just so crazy to me to be like, we'll wing it. We'll just,
It's the winging it, and everything was like like while they were shooting, they were doing meetings. They didn't really have an ending. They didn't have in scene to scene dialogue even picked out. Famously, like some of the biggest lines in the movie are improvised. Joaquin Phoenix just kind of did the "Am I not merciful" line ad-lib. The strength and honor, like, code of the Roman legionnaires was just something Russell Crowe said. Even the scene where, like, Russell Crowe is talking to Marcus Aurelius and is describing the, his house in Spain, because of course Maximus is the Spaniard. Russell Crowe is literally just describing his own kitchen in Melbourne. Like, he's like really struggling out here. There's one anecdote in the behind-the-scenes featurette where Laurie McDonald was one of the executive producers that was overseeing the rewriting process, and she had to leave because she had a family emergency. And when she came back, they're like, "We got this great idea. So we're at the end of the movie, and we still don't have like a really good, reason or motivation for like for Maximus to keep going. So we have Commodus kill Lucilla, the sister, the mom empress that Maximus had like a former flame with." And like McDonald, she just like to the camera regaling us with this story is like, "Let me get this straight. I left the room for like 3 days, and you decided to kill the only female character with a speaking part, the only like threadbare hook that half the audience could like sense. Relate to. That was your answer." I believe it was William Nicholson was finally brought in later in the process, and it was his idea to introduce like the Elysium concept, the field of wheat, the dolls, the praying, that like keeping this idea that like he is moving to be reunited with his family through glory, and that this is a concrete goal, and he is doing this out of love and not just, "You pissed off the wrong emperor,
right,
legionnaire."
Right.
And I really think that does wonders for the script. The quote is, he did not want to see a film about a man who just wanted to kill somebody. And of course, Russell Crowe also was trying to feed lines the entire time and was arguing the entire time about everything. I cannot believe just how ramshackle this story was put together, because it is relatively simple. It really is just like a full-on redemption arc, like sports movie revenge tale. But I just don't understand how they got to this point. Well, there's like actively building a replica Colosseum on the island of Malta.
Right.
And they're still just like, so wait, what should happen here?
When you choose to earn your degree online from Southern New Hampshire University, you're saying yes to new opportunities and to new adventures. You're saying yes to something big, something you've always wanted to do. If earning your degree is one of your goals this new year, SNHU can help you get there. With low online tuition, no set class times, and multiple term starts per year, you can set the pace that works for you and save money along the way. Visit snhu.edu today to get started.
When you share your food, you share your heart. So what's on your table this holiday season? Save on your festive feast at Smith's with delicious deals on all the holiday classics. Or wow the crowd with something new, like a quinoa stuffed butternut squash. It's sure to add a pop of color to your spread. How about a sweet potato casserole with a crunchy oat streusel topping, made with care for the sweet tooth and the savory tooth? With Smith's, fill your table with love and watch as your guests' hearts get as full as their bellies. Smith's, fresh for everyone.
So now I want to talk about the casting. I want to back it up a little bit here. Russell Crowe, born and raised in New Zealand, and started out as a musician before he moved to Australia at the age of 21 to pursue acting. After working on stage, TV, and in film in Australia for a handful of years, he moved over to America to act in films, but his breakout role was in the critically acclaimed movie L.A. Confidential in 1997. I fucking love L.A. Confidential.
I'm sorry, you are going past a very important part of Russell Crowe's journey from generic Auckland weirdo, the son of movie caterers, to international superstar. And that was his rock and roll persona of Russ LaRoque. Are you kidding me?
I'm so sorry I jumped past that. Yeah, he started out in like the punk, like was it new wave punk scene? Was that what it was?
I don't know. There's it's just between his like headshots that you can find as well as just the stage name, Russ LaRoque. I mean, I guess it's less silly now that, you know, you think of the fact that he still tours with his band 30 Odd Foot of Grunts, but like he definitely had rock star ambitions this entire time. April, if you could play just a little bit of I Just Want to Be Like Marlon Brando as sung by a young, baby-faced Russ LaRoque.
Because the leather back at the end.